Hello out there, you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear, listening into another What If discussion. And yes, I do know that these have been long in waiting, but I've had a lot going on, and I've actually put together a lot of videos in the last week and a half, and there's still some other important things I have to take care of at the moment. But right now, I just want to get this recording done and out the way, because this is actually a very interesting subject to me, and you already see what it is. And that is, what if Nintendo actually did go third party? Now, I've actually talked about this before, but I've never really specifically set a scenario in place to look at and judge based on what would happen if Nintendo actually did go third party. So let's go with recent history with the Wii U not doing as well as everybody thought it could do. It didn't necessarily lose Nintendo money, and that's because they had other things going on at the same time, and there were other things that came from the Wii U, like Amiibo, that actually made them money. But in this scenario, we have to take the situation of Amiibo not being the runaway success that it was at the time, and it costing Nintendo more money for Amiibo to be produced than what they were making off of it, which would ultimately cut down on the profits of the Nintendo Wii U. And we would have to cut down how many games that they were selling. Their attachment rate, from what I remember, was 6 games to a console, I believe. It might have been a little bit more. But we'll have to cut that. We'll have to dramatically cut that to like maybe 2 games per console is what they did in order for this scenario to actually work out. Because in order for Nintendo to have decided to go third party, they really would have not been able to make money. And another thing that would have to happen in this scenario is that the 3DS did not recover. It started off poorly and it remained poor throughout its lifetime. And at this point in time, in our current history, the 3DS would have been discontinued by then if it was doing poorly and they weren't making money off the games or the sales of the games or the different models of the 3DS. So in this scenario, there would have been no 2DS XL because the 3DS didn't make any money. There may not have even been a new 3DS. Well, actually, there probably would have been, because they were trying to get Xenoblade Chronicles to run. So the new 3DS would have come out, but it may not have fared very well. So we will in this situation cut what Nintendo got from the Wii U and the 3DS during the 8th generation for themselves. Cut it down to a third of what they had, which means that they still make some money, but it is a poor profit. It is a piss poor profit. They don't make much. And then they look at this and consider, well, we're already moving into the mobile sector. Let's go ahead and just stop working on consoles right now. We can return to this space at some point if we want, but right now we're going to focus on making our games, which would be something that they would come out in a press release and say Nintendo is currently out of the console market. It's not a permanent change in this scenario. It's not a permanent change. It's just one of those things where they're like, okay, we'll hang back a generation. And we'll make our games for other platforms and see how well they fare. And in this situation, I could see Nintendo taking the stance of not just throwing everything they have on every platform, because not everything works everywhere. To be honest, platformers, RPGs, the more cartoony stuff would actually work better on the PlayStation than it would on the Xbox. Even though the Xbox has some of those games, they fare better on PlayStation hardware. And that's been how it's been since Xbox has been introduced. The more cartoonish or brightly colored things, they do better on PlayStation than they do on Xbox. So that would mean that Mario, games like Donkey Kong, let's fighting that cough off. Mario Kart, Smash Brothers. Well, maybe not Smash Brothers. Smash Brothers probably would be multi-platform. They have so much stuff. It's just hard to narrow it all down. But those games would probably more likely be on the PlayStation. Stuff that's more gritty, like Metroid, will more than likely be on the Xbox. You'd see Metroid, and if they brought back Eternal Darkness, that would be over there. Trying to think. It was another game I had in my mind, and I completely just like spaced on it. I would say Bayonetta would also be migrated over to Xbox. Bayonetta 2 and 3 would be migrated over to Xbox because Nintendo would be working exclusively with Platinum to get the game out since they own the IP. The Wonderful 101 would actually probably be on PlayStation. It'd be on PS4, PS5, whichever is coming. And I could see them doing this back and forth, like where they're dividing up what IPs go to what platform and which ones also end up with a PC port for people to be able to enjoy. Because of the novelty of it and how odd the situation would be, crap, this cough won't go away. I could actually see Nintendo's IPs doing really well, at least in the beginning, being third party, just because there'd be so many people who couldn't get their games on third party platform or on other platforms, and they take it as a opportunity to do so because you don't know if Nintendo's going to stay a third party in this situation, and if their stuff sold well enough by putting it on other platforms, I could see them going back in and on the next console generation cycle, they bring everything back in house and do their own platform, which would possibly mean that the Switch would happen, but it would happen at a later date with more efficient parts. Crap, this cough won't go away. It would happen at a later date with more efficient parts, and they would do more work on streamlining everything. They probably still work with NVIDIA and still use some sort of a GeForce GPU. Probably be a lot of this would be a lot later stuff, and it would be worked on more heavily. They might even make the Switch more efficient than what it was this time around. But it's one of those things where I look at it and you can state plainly, Nintendo IPs would sell a lot on other platforms, again, because of the novelty of the idea, where you're looking at, well, this might be the only opportunity to get these games on these third-party platforms with Nintendo, just in case they go back to manufacturing consoles. And I could see it happening for the one generation where they go ahead and put their IPs on other platforms, and they'd be like, well, we did really well, let's bring everything back in-house and do it on our own. Again, with a better machine, more efficient, easier for people to play with, something that they can take everywhere with them. I still think that the concept of the Switch would very well be used. It'd just be better than what it is currently. That's all. And Nintendo would take all that revenue that they gained from not having a console out, put their games back on their own hardware, and it'd probably draw in the audience that they possibly gained from the other platforms, because people were looking like, well, I really like these games if Nintendo's doing their own console again. And I think that would be the situation where people got to play their games and they're like, I really like these games, I want these, and I'm I'm willing to get Nintendo's hardware now because I know these games. There are a lot of people who won't buy Nintendo stuff because they just don't know what the quality of it, and they haven't played it. I can't blame them, but at the same time, it's not a good idea to allow what everyone else's perception is dictate what you decide for yourself. And this would be the opportunity for Nintendo to break that stigma. I mean, it's not like they haven't already with the Switch in and of itself, but it's just one of those scenarios where they'd have the opportunity to make a really big move and surprise a lot of people. And the people that were stubborn about getting their hardware for whatever reason to play their games would be more open to doing it. That's if this scenario happened. I mean, we're in a scenario where the Switch came out and it took off like hotcakes, and a vast majority of people are enjoying it. Even though we do have a lot of complainers online, the vast majority of people enjoy it. I mean, it's up to everybody else to have their own opinions. I'm not saying anyone should follow my own opinion or whatever. But it's just one of those things where there are a lot of people who are critical of it. Some for good reason. Some for superficial reasons. And I think it's more or less up to people individually to decide what they want. In this way around, I can see Nintendo taking full advantage of utilizing both Microsoft and Sony to push their branding and make themselves more popular by putting out high quality games and focusing on individual platforms, not having a whole lot of multi-plat games. They'd have a lot of games out, but they'd be exclusive to one or the other platform. They wouldn't be spread out across platforms all the time, with the exception of specific big hit titles like Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, The Legend of Zelda I could see going to both platforms. Pokemon, once they did the home console versions, Pokemon I could see going to both platforms, because Pokemon is universally very well received for the most part. But again, like grittier titles, Metroid, Eternal Darkness, stuff like Geist, F-Zero, I could see going over to Xbox instead of PlayStation. Platformers and such would be over on Sony. Punch Out, I could see actually being on both too. If they did a Punch Out game, it could be on both platforms, because I don't think there's either crowd is more specifically tuned to sports type franchises than the other. I think it's pretty fair between the two. It goes back and forth. They could drag out older IPs like the 1080 snowboarding and stuff like that. It's just, I could just see it. This would be one of those times where, since they're not putting so many resources into the development of a platform, and that would be something that would happen later, they throw a crap ton of resources into having a lot of high quality games come out. Some that were forced, and again, it'd just be broken up by platform. And then there would be some that are on Xbox and PC or PlayStation and PC, with the rare occurrence of it being across all three. And then their mobile games, I think, would interact more with their home console games. Like I've said many times in the past, how Nintendo should do it. And I really want to see them make that change eventually, but it's something that they have to work on. But I don't know. Like, there's a lot of possibilities with this scenario, but I think honestly in a more positive direction. Again, as I've said several times already, Nintendo going third party, they'd be smart about how they divided up their IPs, and they maximize what they can make off of everything by not rushing stuff out. And they probably still have the same practice of leaving their games at a higher price for a longer period of time, though it may not be as long, because they're not exclusive to their own it's not exclusive to their own platform, so they can't just maximize the profits the same way. But their price drops probably wouldn't be as hefty as a lot of other third-party developers, because their quality is generally higher than other developers. Generally, not always. Generally. And again, for me, looking at it that way, I think it would be pretty cool. Not something I ever foresee happening, but if it did, this is kind of the way I would see it going. And they'd turn a massive profit in like the next console generation. They'd be like, okay, yeah, we're bringing everything back. So you guys got spoiled one generation. We're taking it all back. So if you want it, you gotta come back to us. But I've already rambled on for like 15 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this here. Thank you guys very much for listening. If you want to support the channel in any way, the links are down in the description for my poetry book, The Neurotic Mind. The Neurotic Mind, digital and physical copies available on Amazon. Thank you very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games. Peace out.